Myths and stereotypes. Sometimes myths and stereotypes seem positive. Oh, people with Down syndrome are so sweet and cute. People with developmental disabilities are just the kindest. They're all good people and all whatever it is. I actually find that kind of patronizing, like you're taking away a whole other half of someone's personality. Now, reality though, myths and stereotypes are often negative. Maybe it's that people with developmental disabilities are somehow they seem weird, they seem repulsive. Especially if they have some type of physical disability, or it's contagious. I've actually heard that. Or, well, no one must care about them. Or if they have one disability, they must have a bunch. I see this a lot with people who are diagnosed with cerebral palsy because they have rigid spastic movements, because sometimes they can't control those movements, because sometimes they use a wheelchair, because sometimes they have severe speech difficulty where there must be other stuff going on. And let me just tell you, a lot of people that you see like that, sharp as a tack up here, man. So don't make that mistake. Don't make the mistake of going up. Well, to anybody we support, but in particular that population, and go like what I've seen so many times. Hey, buddy, how you doing? Hey, high five, right? We know. Sometimes the judgment is made that the person is incapable of real learning. Well, yeah, I mean, I know they graduated high school, but really graduate. Sometimes the assumption is made, well, they have no meaningful life. And if there is any myth or stereotype that I may tend, and I stress those words, to agree that maybe that one. Only because, in my humble opinion, that is shared by many, but not everybody. I've caught backlash. Living a life in a day program from the time you get out of high school to the time you leave this earth, I just don't know how meaningful a life that is, and I don't know how meaningful of a future that is when you're 22 years old. I've run day programs. Wonderful people work in day programs. Wonderful people run day programs. Wonderful people own day programs. But the fact is that I doubt if any of us, and if there are some, it's very few, and we'd have to maybe look at maybe your quality of life, would trade our careers, what we do, drop everything and go to a day program for 40 hours a week, 8 hours a day. So when maybe that idea of someone not having a meaningful future, now I do believe there could be something to that, which leads to the devaluation of people supported, which means that being in a group of less of undervalued people, that creates a heightened risk for abuse, neglect, and exploitation. You see the dominoes fall, guys. Right? There are a lot of things that happen before that can cause what we're talking about to happen. Sometimes if a person is not able to express or show pain, we might assume that they don't have feelings of pain, or of course they do. There's a gentleman I knew he was a voc rehab counselor for a young man with an intellectual disability. He also had an expressive speech disorder, and very, very, very cool guy, friendly, great work ethic. But the person he supported, this gentleman, he had been admitted to a psych unit because he hit his mother. And it was discovered that he actually had a severe ear infection, and hitting his mom was probably the most likely result of the pain that he had, but he couldn't tell anybody. God, have any of you ever had a toothache or an earache? That pain is excruciating. It'll bring tears to your eyes. And imagine if you couldn't tell somebody. I love my mother to death, but if I was in that case, I might do the same thing this guy did just to get my point across. Right? And so all of a sudden, because of that, because of his disability, it was assumed he was a danger to the community. Loses his job, starts all over again, basically. There's also the assumption that people with disabilities or certain disabilities are alike, you know. I remember, you know, back in the day, you know, many years ago, well, people with autism don't like hugs. Don't touch them. That's, you know, can they be more sensitive to touch? Absolutely. Does it mean that they don't like hugs? Absolutely not. This one too, I always get a chuckle at. Well, people with Down syndrome are just so sweet-tempered, so nice. Well, that's false. I have met some people with Down syndrome throughout my career who are not very nice and definitely are not sweet-tempered. Just all those assumptions are just kind of ridiculous, and they're triggered by fear. They're triggered by lack of understanding and even prejudice. You know, promoting negative images of disability is a form of discrimination because it creates barriers to inclusion. Okay? Promoting negative images of disability is a form of discrimination because it creates barriers to inclusion for people who have a disability. Right? And so when we talk about treating everyone equally, yeah, hey, listen, I have met a lot of people undiagnosed. Some are nice, some are sweet, some are jerks, some are selfish, some are a lot of things. I have met a lot of people with developmental disabilities. Some are sweet, some are kind, some are jerks, some are selfish, some are a lot of things. Right? So we have to be careful with those types of stereotypes. Myths and stereotypes, they do contribute to a less valued role in our society. And again, when you don't have a valued role, guys, you risk losing respect. That's why we, like, you know, here at Practical Training Solutions, we promote adults going to work, volunteering. And I know a lot of times people hear that and they usually think one of two things. Well, John is so aggressive. There's a way. Let's figure it out. Or someone who's just too medically fragile. There's a way. It may not be a 40-hour work week for that person. Maybe it's a 2-hour work week, but there's a way so the community can see that we and the people we support can give back too. That's how you break myths and stereotypes. People who are devalued and not respected, guys, they have a lower status in the community and sometimes even in their family. I hate to say that, but it's the truth. And sometimes in a family, they don't even mean to do it. Maybe the firstborn kid in the family has a developmental disability. 3 years later, the second kid comes and they're born neurotypical, no disability. And what I've seen sometimes, and again, the family isn't meaning to do this, but the sibling who's 3 years younger, when they cognitively pass their older brother and sister, now they take on the role of big brother and big sister, and the firstborn has lost that role. That's a devalue. That is a loss of respect. And parents should be concerned about this. A child's lack of valued roles may mean that they never experience a healthy relationship, much less an intimate, healthy relationship. And that alone can make them more vulnerable to abuse, neglect, and exploitation. And let me tell you this. If this type of thought, which I'm going to label it as infantilizing, treating someone like a baby, if you will, like a child, if this type of thought invades a company and takes over that culture of the company, which has happened right now, it may happen for the agency you work for. That company becomes ripe for abuse if it's not already happening. If people at your agency are talked to in any way that's less than respectful, in any way that's less than equal, like the way you and I would talk to each other, that company's ripe for abuse. And that company, if they don't already, will have a physical abuse problem shortly. It's been proven over and over again. So yeah, this is a pretty easy math problem. Devaluation plus lack of respect equals an increased risk of maltreatment.